Nice. It's the Fake Truth intro.
It's short. It's what do they call that? Abbreviation. It's an abbreviation for introduction. What if we just called it the deduction? Because you could get that confused with other ductions. Subduction, reduction. I feel like there's a bunch of ductions. Yeah, we better just stick with intro. Let's call it the intro.
Damn dog. It's a live show. It's the live Fake Truth show. Welcome to this particular stream of this particular show. It's good to be here. Oh man, I have fun doing this thing, but I unfortunately have a very very heavy wave headed my direction. That will be just basically, flooding me out, flooding me of my time and energy. So, hard to say when the next stream is going to be coming down the pike, but don't let that make you turn the channel and give up on me because, I'm not giving up. It's a bit of a marathon we're on here, and, it's hard enough to create content, much less create content that is actively being suppressed and derided, reduced by the powers that be. Basically, the platform that we are on at this very moment, they are doing everything in their power, putting all their best minds to work to keep channels like this down, to make sure that none of this ever goes viral, and if it ever does, well, they have another button that they can press to slow that all back down again. So but what is life without opposition, without a little difficulty? They say that that's how a lot of people do their best work, is having a little opposition so they can practice their resilience. That's a trait that I guess a lot of people that succeed seem to have, that their resilience is a little bit better. And well, I like to think that I'm going to keep coming back in the same way that the hexagons keep coming back into my eyeballs. And, it's just hard, even if I don't speak out loud when I'm in public or on the show, it's always in my mind. It's this internal dialogue that's going on in my brain. And, yet again, that obviously seems to be the most important part and aspect of us to control this inner dialogue that we're having, right? Because it's obviously important to control and know what people are going to say out loud and write on social media and all that other kind of stuff. Obviously important to control and look at that, but the bigger game, the more important game, I would argue, is for the thoughts and ideas that aren't going up on the internet, that aren't here on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else, that people are too scared or ashamed to write about. Those ideas, what are they? What do they have to do with? And I would think if you're trying to organize this whole system and keep a lid on it, that you would definitely be very interested in what's going on in people's minds when they're not talking. And yeah, would I would develop instruments of control and ways of, I don't know. I don't think that they're quite there at that level to be able to just straight up read your mind. Although I wouldn't put past them, and I would expect some sort of technology like that to be coming down the pike in the near future. I think they still have to get it out of us, right? And that's why there is all this effort to watch the feeds, the social medias, the independent blogs, and of course the sketchy borderline content being created here on YouTube, because that is sort of the wellspring that wrong speak and bad thoughts will come from, right? We all have to get inspired and pull our ideas from someplace. And I would understand. I would totally get why you would not want this particular secret getting out, right? Because if everybody that did watch TV was also noticing the hexagons and other shapes, the different colors, the interplay of them all, that yeah, that would have a huge negative impact on the brain massaging that's happening currently in everybody's homes. Because yeah, conscious understanding of the mechanisms of control that are operating on you are yeah, that sort of breaks the spell. And it's interesting. It is a very powerful spell. That I don't have another word for it, basically, because right, something weird happens every time I bring these topics up in public. There's a very strong sort of protection mechanism that comes out in most regular people that maybe haven't seen some of the things that you or me have seen. They're willing to go and defend the status quo and whatever you want to call it, the powers that be, the party line. They're willing to jump right in between you and that party line, and basically battle to the death and make you feel like the one that is ignorant, under researched, improperly guided. When point in case, it's usually the other way around. We're often talking about things that the person that I'm discussing this with has not even thought about these things for even a minute, or much less read a book or watched any sort of videos about these ideas and concepts. But they're instantly ready to go to the mat and defend that everything's okay, that everything's all good. And I don't know what else to call that, but besides a spell, right? Something snaps in people's minds and they become willing and vocal soldiers for the blanket of reality that is covering us and distorting, yeah, the actual truth, the reality of what is happening out there. And it's very interesting to see people jump in front of something that they, a system that is putting them down as we go along. But I've been feeling that a lot of pushback lately. Whenever you bring up something like, say, oh, I don't know, maybe a government that doesn't have the best interest of the people in mind. Well, maybe that is just my opinion. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. But it seems to be like, well, at least it's something we could talk about. But that seems to be the hardest thing to talk about at all these days. What are these taboo subjects? What are things that we're not supposed to discuss about? Right? One of those high up on the list would be geoengineering. Right? This is something that you cannot address in polite conversation. That well, and obviously the numbers are going to be many steps too far for most people. But that this, right, in 2020, that we see 22 killed by this powerful tornado, and they're using these words like war zone. What else are we supposed to think, right? Apparently, I don't know a lot about tornadoes, but apparently it's not even tornado season, and this thing came through and just demolished everything. Right, and I guess that is the nature of our ephemeral headlines. That by this point, it's been the number's been changed to 25. I remember seeing headlines before that putting it at 19 and other numbers. So, right, maybe I'm reading too much into the numbers, but I still think it's interesting that the official headline still up there is this 22. That's the one, the number that they've left it at. And as well, all these things, right? I'm sure these people didn't deserve to die. That it's a tragedy, and this is obviously a heavy blow to this town. That's what we're supposed to talk about. But if we try to take it a step further and discuss maybe the other reasons behind this, how this story, even if it was completely natural, how it can be wielded as a weapon to get you to believe certain things, maybe about climate change. It's a constant struggle for me trying to figure out, well, what about reality can we actually talk about in public? What's going to freak people out? And what are we trying to do here in our little secret borderline content cave here on YouTube? What is it exactly that we're trying to figure out? And is it something that we can even get to the bottom of two? Right? I don't think we can really figure that out for a guaranteed fact. We have no way to research whether this was a man-made event, something steered, whether the numbers are manipulated or possibly used for symbolic reasons. I don't know if we get to prove any of that. But I get these ideas in my head, and it seems like, well, I guess technically we still do have free speech. If I have an idea, even if it's wrong and wrongly founded, and I'm just being a total loser idiot wasting my time, I still like to think that is it's a right of mine, something free speech, that even if it's craziness, even if it's not true at all, that I can still be allowed to say it. And I guess, yes, I still am allowed to say it. I still am allowed to talk about it, but they will do everything in their power to suppress these types of talks, these ideas, and push it away from anybody that isn't directly searching for it. And I guess that's another discussion about free speech. How free is it anymore if everywhere we're allowed to speak is controlled by major corporations with vested interests in keeping the party line? I guess I can just still write it in a journal or stand on a street corner and talk about this stuff. There's still nothing preventing me from doing that, but yeah, that's constant my question. How slippery is the slope, and how far do we get a slide until well, I guess we can't recognize ourselves anymore. So speaking of not recognizing ourselves, I was looking at this story, right? I think there is a lot of truth in that ancient, very expensive and maybe poorly created show Waterworld, where maybe sometime before this time period or sometime in the distant future, that yes, that everything will sort of melt, the atmosphere and etc. will change its ways, and all of that fresh water that's locked up in the glaciers and other areas will melt and cover the planet, and that, well, there'd be nowhere to stand. You got to get that boat out. You got to ride that boat around. And so this is right from space.com. They're saying 1.5 billion years ago that it was just water. That's all there was. And this, I'm getting conflicting information just from the headline and the blurb here. They're saying 3.2 billion years ago. That's definitely a big gap between 1.5 and 3.2. But I guess they're saying it was completely covered with water. And that was sort of my other question. Well, if everything used to be covered with water, is that really where all the water went? It just got locked up in ice in the frozen glaciers or whatever, or is there some other sort of hiding spot that all of this water has gotten to that has led it to expose the rest of the rocky parts of this planet? Where is this water, and how is it going to come back? And is this more sort of right, just a harmless study, a simple idea, or is this going to be something agenda driven? I would always sort of assume that it's going to be agenda driven and then be pleasantly surprised after that fact. But yet again, I'm picturing the people in my real life reacting to that statement and thinking, well, geez, you're such a pessimist. Why does everything always have to be so dark and negative? Yeah, and maybe I should just chill out. Maybe I should just stop picturing and trying to get to the bottom of all this stuff. Because even if I was able to find out the actual accurate, true level of truth all the way down to the core, that once I found myself there, I would basically be alone. That almost no one would be able to follow me there, even the hardiest of truth seekers, and that's what it seems like. The closer you get to truth, the further you're moving away from the rest of humanity. And that is a little terrifying, and obviously a very good mechanism to keep people away from this sort of behavior. I see it working very effectively. But at the same time, it's hard to look at stuff like the virus and the absolute sort of financial chaos that's been unleashed just already here at the very beginning, and not see that as all as a part of some grander movement, some larger agenda. It's very obvious to me. And right, what are the odds that this new research that probably would have been in research for years, it seems like it would take a lot of time to figure something like this out. Laser powered liquid jets could inject drugs into skin without needles. Well, if we're actually planning on vaccinating / injecting literally everybody on this planet to protect us from this common cold, I mean coronavirus, well then, yeah, it seems like we're going to need a quicker, faster, easier delivery method to get this drug into people's systems, and right, without the danger and difficulty of finding a vein or any of that kind of stuff. If you actually had sort of just powered jets that could inject people, well then you wouldn't have to have this staff be so trained. You could have checkpoints all over the place where these drugs, whatever's in there, could be flowing into the population constantly. And it's really something that you see all the time in film and TV, some sort of, yeah, delivery device that seems very easy to use. You just line it up against the skin, press a button, and voila, it's in your system. And right, just very interesting to me to see this discovery, this idea coming out. Well, just right here, smack dab in the middle of this chaos that has been unleashed. But yet again, right, it's probably just a coincidence, and we sure are grateful for this company doing good research, good development into something that's obviously going to be a great need going forward. So thank you, needleless injection company, for coming up with this. And right, as with any Overton window, any Hegelian dialectic attempt, the core point, the whole reason for all of the theater, the quarantines, the emails, the fear, the shaky stock market, what is it all for? Right? Let's switch back to the concept of this all being orchestrated and coordinated from really just a handful of powerful people at the top. Well, what are we trying to get into people's minds, right? That, well, there is a danger. We are all hyper connected in this world, and that there could be casualties from that. The danger of a spread, a biological spread of material. And, well, what can we do to prevent that? What can we do to stop something like that? Well, right, something like this seems as hard to contain as the yearly flu cycle that all it takes is one or two people to really have a tough day, get too exhausted, stay out in the cold a little bit too long, and bam, there you're sick. And then those people are going to get around other people, and it'll just spread. I think we all have a basic concept of contagion and how that all works. Well, now we seem to be constantly confronted with the concept of trying to stop something that unstoppable. And, well, what can we do, if anything, to do that? And the number one answer that seems to be cropping up over and over again is isolation, separation, and a pulling back and away from direct contact, from social interaction, which, as far as agendas go, is going great in general, right? They pushed everybody into their phones and away from meeting socially. Your average teenagers are not going getting some burgers and making out on top of the mountain or whatever in their car. They're mostly just texting, and a lot of teenagers aren't even losing their virginity these days. It's more of the sort of the norm than what it was before, and that's only taken less than a generation, which is pretty impressive, right? So a lot of things in our culture have been pushing us back into our rooms, keeping us locked to our devices because, like we're talking about, that mental game, that thing that's for all the marbles, it's much easier to control and guide if you're not having conversations with, say, people like me. If you're not exposed to any other sort of modes of communication, or if other things make you feel uncomfortable the same way that I tend to make people uncomfortable when I talk about this stuff in real life. Well, how can you push all of that into the next level, into the higher gear? Well, it would be constantly sending out information like this, that Starbucks is not going to let you use your own cup, that your cup is probably covered in horrible diseases that, well, you shouldn't be bringing back out into the public. And a lot of this, right, we're about to get into altered carbon. A lot of this has to do with, I don't even want to say dehumanizing, because that's not really quite the right word or the quite emotion behind it. But that's sort of what all of this is about, the uncarbonifying of humanity, the pulling us away, the pulling apart of our biology and everything that goes along with that, our biological needs and desires and wants, pulling our consciousness, separating it away from the biological, and making us feel like everything biological about this species is wrong, broken, dangerous, and an affront to the beauty that is this natural planet, right? Because that's what a lot of this talk is about, altering your carbon, going carbon neutral. Well, there literally is no way for a human body to be carbon neutral because we are carbon based, right? So how do we head towards a zero carbon or zero, or whatever they want to call it, neutral, carbon neutral existence? Well, it almost seems like a lot of that is going to have to come directly through something like what's being portrayed in this TV show, right? And it is the separation. That's what they talk about this whole show, the separation of your consciousness from your physical body. That's all that really matters, and that we will hopefully head towards a day, one day soon, when we will think of our body as a disposable object, just like a toothbrush or anything else really in our disposable culture, something that can be recycled, maybe refurbished and sent on to somebody else, but on the level of right, obviously an expensive purchase like a car, an automobile, but that your human body would somehow, yeah, start to fall into that category, and that then people with enough money would be able to maybe have a nicer body with some more upgrades, some better some better. What happens in this season? He gets like magnets in his hands so he can have his gun shoot across the room and right, Spider-Man style or whatever. I guess that's what we're all sort of hoping and looking forward to. And right, any agenda, any concept I've ever brought up on this show has been under careful consideration. There's nothing that I've seen just once or even twice or three times that I've brought up here. What I like to talk about and look at myself are these big trends. The trends so big that they're going under the radar of most people, because I see honestly the truth and the power of that when you start to see stuff that goes all the way across genres, decades, styles. When you see the same things happening over and over again, well, there's either some bizarre, low-lying natural explanation for that, some subconscious event, or it's something that's been coordinated and talked about, disseminated, released, and then required to be part of the conversation. Right? I think if you were working on this show and you told the art director or the colorist or anybody else, "Hey, what's going on with all these hexagons? Is that in the style sheet, or whose idea was that?" If you start asking questions like that, I could see you getting put off the project, because as with all these things, that there might be a couple conscious people doing this consciously at the very top, but it works much better when it's sifting directly into your consciousness without you noticing that. For example, there is red, white, and blue in every single frame of this 10-hour epic. That there are literally hexagons or hexagonal structures in every single frame. We're not talking one or two scenes. We're talking every single frame of this season was 8 hours. That's 8 hours of content. We're talking frame by frame, right? 24 frames a second. That there is not a frame in the entire 8 hours that doesn't follow these rules. And then we're led to other questions. Well, why would that be so important? What are these rules, and what are the effects that it's having on me? Right? And as always, I would encourage you to consciously notice what's going on here. Right? Do you see the red? Do you see the blue? Do you see the white? I see it. Do you see the hexagons surrounding this earth? And the main reason I wanted to really look into this episode was the bizarre plot line that ends up teasing out of itself towards the end. Right, a lot of the show's very sort of hypey and emotional, based on this. They spend a lot of time and energy filling in this concept of a transferable consciousness, that basically your whole existence gets written to this little cartridge. It sort of seems like a Game Boy cartridge or something, and it goes in the back of your neck, and as long as it doesn't get damaged or broken in any way, you can pull it out of the lifeless, killed body and just spin it back up, as they say, put it into another body, or maybe even put it in a virtual reality and let you hang out there for a while. Because, right, as they're saying, and I guess I'm fond of saying, consciousness is everything. It's the only game in town. And if you control it, if you have dominion over it, then, well, you won the game. You won the only game in town. And there's a couple little scenes, little phrases I wanted to just look at real quick here, right? this guy, this character is an AI, sort of a sentient, corporeal artificial intelligence who has his own sort of issues. He gets glitches and goes through a whole sort of journey there, right? But we're encouraged to consider this idea that that an AI could have human level consciousness and would then therefore need to be treated with the same amount of respect and dignity that any other sort of non-official consciousness would be, right? This is, I think, another prep and push in the direction that seems inevitable, right? I have no respect for Siri or whoever the Google person is. They're really annoying and don't seem to ever really understand what I'm saying. But I can see how the process is already starting, right? You're supposed to talk to Siri or the other Google robot in a similar way with respect. If you swear at it and berate it, it's not going to do what you want it to do. Some very interesting lines, and that's often what we miss here when I'm just pulling frames. We don't get to hear the music or the dialogue, and that's obviously a very important part of this whole story as well, right? And so he talks about this. I will not squander what time I have left, which has been on my mind a lot these days. Our time, what's been made available to us, right? And yet again, sometimes you have to extrapolate, but there's the hexagons there. And that's what he says. He's not just an AI. As your friend, I entreat you to not squander yours. I'd say it's pretty good advice from Altered Carbon here, right? There really is so little time that each of us has been given to roam this earth. And if you find yourself in a situation that you don't like, if you're not working towards something that you believe in, then, well, I'd say stop as soon as possible. Right now, this very second, if you're even capable of it, because there's just not enough time. I entreat you. There's no time to waste. Don't squander what little time has been given you. It's my lesson to myself. Who knows? Is it good advice? I don't know. Nice. Hitting that 33 mark. Let's keep clicking through these slides because there's just a couple more. Let me get that out of the way. Just a couple more messages I want to get in here before I call it again, before we part ways, as we seem to be fond of doing. Now, in this show, a lot of concepts get talked about, a lot of different ideas, but the one that was really striking to me, because it's been in this community for quite some time, that, right, and that's where I always see the same truths being hinted at in these shows, that they're on this planet, right? They're having a pretty good time, as you could see. But there's something about this planet that I guess they haven't really told the general population, and it has to do with an ancient culture. That there were actually, there was an advanced civilization that was present on this planet, and it wasn't until, right, and then humans came and colonized it and started to build all of their own stuff. But there are things on this planet that defy our current level of understanding, or at least in the show. Ancient technology that seems to be thousands of years ahead of anything that the humans are capable of. And one of those things is a global network. You see it depicted here, a global network of satellites surrounding the entire planet. And they call it angel fire. And these are basically little orbitals, they call them, and they're basically directed energy weapon machines that are sitting up there in the lower atmosphere, just ready to rain down angel fire on everybody. And right, if you're familiar with the whole truth-seeking thing, this I could very well be describing planet Earth. These are all concepts that I think are pretty standard here in the truth community. That there is an advanced, or there was an advanced, possibly non-human race of beings that lived on this planet, and the sort of hidden knowledge and secrets they've left behind are everywhere, and that there is also a concerted effort to stamp out these ideas, this knowledge, and any sort of documentation or representation of it. And this has to do with destroying sacred sites in the Middle East and buildings all over the world, basically, that don't fit into the narrative, that seem basically impossible and unbuildable by our regular people. Right? We're seeing the same exact concept mirrored in this show. But it's still very interesting to me to have this particular concept, this idea of a global satellite network that is controllable by a certain group of people and is able to rain down death and destruction upon this planet at the blink of an eye with no possible way of defending yourself. Right? This is a scorched earth policy. And it's represented yet again through the hexagons. These are hexagonal structures that seem to be sort of like lightning flying through the sky. And this is maybe not the best frame of it, but you see it there. And this is just yet again to call your attention to the colors. Do we notice, right? Because colors have a wider range of things, but it seems plain as day to me. Do you see the red? I see the red in the background. You see the blue. The blue is in his shadow on his face, and the whites come out in the fingernails and also in the skin tones as well. I see the red, white, and the blue here. Obviously, it's done in an artistic way, but it's present nonetheless, and it's present front to back. Blue, red, white. It's the color of a flag and color of many other things. Use these three colors in combination. And the more I see it being used, the more it makes me wonder what power lies beneath this, directly in front of our eyes. What is it about using these three colors in combinations? Because it's very aggressive in this show, and it's something I've noticed in many other shows as well, particularly the red, white, and the blue. What is it about that? And here, I mean, this really is sort of a pretty exemplary frame from this show, right? We have the colors, we got the hexagon, and that's all layered on top of the plot and the characters and the ideas and all of that kind of stuff. But it's obviously a critical importance, right? This one's a little more subtle as far as the coloring, but I see it nonetheless. There's the red in the background, the blue and the white. It really is always there, right? And if maybe it's extra subtle, I just see a tiny little sliver of red here, it will quickly shift and change to fill in the blanks for you. Right, so here's this is towards the end of the actual season. We see this ancient consciousness invading the Game Boy cartridge of some regular people, and basically, I guess we've made the ancients angry with all of this consciousness transfer and stripping of the planet of its resources. Obviously, sounds familiar. So he's gonna exact his revenge, his vengeance, that people weren't going along with his plan. So he's gonna use, right, surprise, surprise, his hexagonal little toy box thing to stick into his ancient technology and start to control the directed energy weapons, satellites, whatever you want to call them, that are up there ready to rain death and fire down on us. And this gets used dramatically a lot in the show as well. Not all of it has to be subconscious, right? We see the blue as it is calm and good, but then, he decides, well, I don't actually want to save the humans. I'm going to kick it back in high gear, and we get the red, right? this switch back and forth, the red and the blue. Red, obviously, something that we should think of as bad, evil. Red is often sort of used in combination with that, with the blue being more soothing, calming. But as with most of these things, I have little doubt that it's a reversal, right? That the blue is the low frequency, much more representative of lower, deeper, darker, satanic, Luciferian, whatever you want to call it. That the blue is the lower frequency, the darker, and that the red is the more higher energetic, more powerful, but harder to control. The red and the blue and the red and blue and red and blue, right? And we see the white. The white ends up bleeding over. Right? It may seem like I'm trying to explain around corners, but that's also how they get good at hiding this in plain sight. That it seems like, well, obviously, yeah, there's a white reflection off of these leather gloves, but if there wasn't already naturally, I would think that they would have to add it artificially through color correction, because it really is that important how pervasive these things are. And before we head out of here, I want to analyze one of the final speeches that is made before the end of the season, because usually towards this, right before the end mark, they end up dropping knowledge, discussing things that seem to have a deeper meaning. And right, you're in that stage where you're getting sad. You're gonna miss these characters. You're probably not gonna see them again for a year and more. And so you're feeling that separation anxiety, right? They got you in a vulnerable emotional state at this point. And so that's going to be a critical time to push out any information that really they want to settle deep inside of you. They say hope begins in the dark. And all of this seems to be vaguely referencing our human journey on this planet. The idea that maybe we were underground, that maybe we were stuck underground, and that this cyclical society that we've been living in has had us constantly heading from the surface back to underground to protect the species. And that this is sort of the cycle that we're stuck in because of the global cataclysm that we can't seem to stop or control. It's something, yeah, that it definitely seems to be hinted at or true that people have had to head underground to survive any number of things, and that it's really the only answer. It's the only way we've made it this far through this many generations. And right, we're talking non-traditional history, the more hinted at version, where there have been different races going back hundreds of thousands of years, and that intelligent humanity has been on this planet for much longer than the 6,000 or 7,000 years that we're generally taught in school. Right, so again, interesting to begin this very important speech with this idea. They say hope begins in the dark. That faith is the bird that feels light when the sky is still dim. Because a lot of this also ties into that, right? The year without a summer, the idea that, there is some sort of weird cataclysm, some weird thing that happens in the sky, and it blocks out all light and ruins the crops, makes us blind and crazy, right? The year without a summer, there's always so much focus towards that period of the 1800s. There must be something to it. But that's what's kept us going this whole time, right? Even when you're down underground, starving and possibly cannibalizing the rest of your tribe, that this faith will be what keeps us going. That we do believe in a day when the sunlight will happen again. We'll be able to go outside and live again. But with every tomorrow, we carry our past, and this is where they really start to dig at you, when they really get in your brain, because, well, this can make you think of a lot of things, right? Things in your life, maybe some regrets that you've had, missteps and bad decisions, maybe something like putting off climate change and not worrying about it for until it's much too late. That idea just gets seeded directly into your brain that even through the best of us, if you really went to rehab and made all your apologies or really changed your ways, if you never engaged in any of the bad behavior that you have been engaging in for your entire life, that even if you never went back to that bad behavior, you would still have to carry it with you. You would never be able to let it go. And it's very important in this show too, this idea with the idea that humans are now living for thousands of years and able to pass from one body to the next. That sure, yeah, that sounds kind of cool that you would not die, but you will also continually carry everything with you. All of the problems and issues that you've had in your first body, you will carry on to the next body. And it's sort of this sobering wake up call that I think ties directly into the whole climate agenda and collective action concept that we're being inundated with. That, well, you can't. We have to change, but we also can't completely forget ever about what we've done, the behavior that we've engaged in up to this point. And yeah, I wanted to give you a second here, but do you notice the hexagons? In this show, there's a lot of sort of triangles and cut off hexagons, different levels of it, but right, this frame is no different. We have the hexagons. I see red, I see blue, I see white. It's not exactly rocket science. And we're almost done here. What is the end of this speech? Right. So this concept, I think it's critical to keep us in this guilt phase. This idea that you share the blame for the state the planet's in, and this again just calls out that concept of hidden culture surviving under the planet. Right. It echoes beneath our feet. Because what would be beneath our feet? Those deep underground military bases or large, expansive living quarters that they've built down there, I think, for whatever's coming, right? We're obviously being made to think about all these things at the same time. And this is a difficult point to tease out, but I think it's incredibly important and speaks to the whole kit and caboodle. How do they get everybody lined up in these emotional states, and how do they hold on to them? And they got to spread it around, right? Because not everybody in the world, in the country, has seen altered carbon all the way to the back, and even those that have, they may have not been paying attention for this final speech. They may have been distracted by something else. In which case, the same message has to go in many other places, right? It can't just be available in this one location. But analyzing anything like this that's put in a prominent location that is most likely going to have a high emotional impact on a large percentage of the viewers, if you can tease that apart, they're laying all their cards out here, basically, because they have to. They have to. And if we're able to see it, then you can avoid being, affected. Maybe put into some behavior or thought processes that aren't in your own best interest, but that seemed like it, that really, really seemed like your best interest, but it really was just the magic of that content that tricked you into that. And again, do you see it? I see the blue, I see the white, and hidden behind the subtitles, there's the red back there. There's a little red back here too. Literally frame by frame, you could go through the entire 8 hours. Right? Okay, maybe not every single millisecond, right? They're panning down. I have no doubt that there's some blue down there. But that's the main message, I think, from this show and from culture in general these days. There are no clean slates. All of our transgressions are going to go pull with us forward, and there's nothing really you can do about that. And if you try to ignore what's happened in the past and pretend like you didn't do all that bad stuff that probably you weren't supposed to do, that there is no hope for a true change in behavior, a movement towards something better. Or is it the opposite, right? Should we be encouraged to be washed of our sins, be able to let things go, know that we've engaged in poor behavior, maybe made some mistakes, but that with the right mindset, with the right processing of that experience, instead of rehashing it and carrying it with you for the rest of your life like a huge burden, that you would be able to let certain things go, and that maybe that's the only way to get past certain things and truly change your behavior. Because if you're stuck constantly carrying that weight with you, that you won't ever reach past a certain point. You'll be stuck there. But that's not the message of this show. There are no clean slates. You can never restart fully. That's the message. And that's about all I got for you. I guess we're getting kind of serious here because I like discussing this stuff, but I'm not sure how long we're gonna keep going. Basically, I hope to be back soon, but it's hard to say when. But I would encourage you to just keep your eyes open, right? Do you see the red? Do you see the blue? Do you see the white? Do you see the hexagon? Well, you just worked your way out of a spell there. Nice work. Do you see it? Do you see the hexagons? Can you see them on the floor, on the sky, everywhere? And I would argue that, a lot of this stuff is floating around our real world as well. So I would encourage you to take a look out there. And now, I think I'm going to call it. I think I'm going to leave it right there. We've already been on for a minute. I was having some issues with my restream, so was not able to check out the chat, but it seems like we got some people in the chat. It's good to see you, Kim. Good to see you, Eilish, Travelers Guild. I appreciate you guys. I honestly do. And I'm glad. I'm always grateful for this time that we get to spend together.
That's right. It's a faketruther now. The faketruther where we just try to get to the bottom of stuff. Like literally everything. It doesn't really matter what it is. It just seems like it doesn't matter. Like whether it's a TV show, or like just a bug on the ground, or just like some architecture. There's hidden knowledge in everything, and I guess you could just totally ignore all that and just go through life like it doesn't matter, you'd be fine. It probably doesn't, but also, knowledge is power.
All right. Keep it real, everybody. Just keep it real. And I hope we'll get to talk again soon. Just know that my consciousness will be out here day in, day out, still looking for the truth. And I hope you'll do your best not to just go back to sleep again and just start chowing down on the endless entertainment slurry that is offered to us every day. Just try to use as much as your brain as you can. I think nothing bad can come from that, at least from your perspective, from the guys in charge. I would argue that that's the most dangerous, worst possible thing you can do, is activate your mind. So if you're into sticking it to the man, do that.
Activate your mind. Activate your mind.